So there's a misconception that if you're single, you are incomplete, perhaps damaged, salvaged, and you won't be happy until you find your one. And that is not true. That is bullshit. It is a message that has been fed to us by media and advertising. The truth is, when you're single, you have the richest soil for growth. That's why I created this podcast. And unlike other podcasts, this one is host-driven, not guest-driven. That means I will be rotating health and wellness experts 3 times a week to give you the giant box of wellness crayons, not just the primary colors, so you can start building a meaningful life. It's time to give singlehood a cape. First of all, I want to thank you for being one of our hosts slash contributors slash, I don't know, catalysts. And I know you got married early.
I mean, it's funny. I was 28 when I got married, which I think to my mother's generation, I remember at the time her feeling like I was in the final stages of the hunt, as she likes to call it. Now it seems so young to me. Now I feel like I was just a baby, you know?
Yeah, I got married at 29. And do you sometimes look back and if you think about who you were when you got married, just like almost a different person, no?
Completely different person. Describe
to us who you were when you got married at 28.
Oh my gosh. I feel like it was another lifetime. I feel like in my early 20s, I'd been sort of what I think the people in my family would call a little bit of a loose cannon. I partied a lot. I would, just do things on whims. Like I was living in Chicago, working in publicity. So I would party a lot with the events that we threw. And then I think one weekend I was like on a whim, like I'm moving to New York. And I just sort of would just do things to disrupt life. And, when I met my ex-husband, he is very different. He is very much the yin to my yang. And so it was sort of like, this was me doing something that was responsible because he was very grounding. He was very, something in my life that felt like stability to certainly me, but also my family. And I think I was I was the youngest. I think in a lot of ways, like my family sort of, took care of me a little bit into early adulthood more than maybe was good for me. And so I joke a lot of times that it felt like my mom sort of passed the baton to my ex-husband and was like, you take her. I'm sort of done worrying about her or taking care of her. So it sort of felt like, this is what I'm meant to do now. I'm meant to be taken care of by this person now. You know what I mean?
He was your handrails, huh? And so what was that like? So you got married and then was obviously it was great in the beginning, or what was that like going from single to being married?
It's interesting to think about what was it like in the beginning, because I've given that a lot of thought, and we've certainly, my ex-husband is one of my best friends, and we sometimes unpack, what was that time, But I remember people used to ask me all the time when I knew that I loved him. And there was this moment when we were living in Brooklyn and we were asleep, and this picture fell off the wall right over our beds. And his from dead sleep automatic response was to grab me and make sure I was okay and cover me. And he was just very protective. And so I think that was always the story that I used to describe why I loved him, because I felt very safe. But what I've realized in retrospect is that doesn't really have anything to do with him and who he is, right? It was very much to me sort of an illustration of what our relationship was like a lot of times, that he very much took care of me. There was a lot of codependency in retrospect in our relationship. He was sort of the parentified child in his childhood. So he knew how to really pick up that role and I take care of things. That's what I do. But I don't know that I see what
you're saying. So you're saying that him taking care of you by, which is obviously very romantic, him in the middle of sleep, waking up and putting his body over yours to protect you. Yes. You saw that as love when you were younger, of course, but now it could have been more of that's just the way he is. That's that's his knee jerk. That's his wiring. He takes care of people, and that's what he does. So, but I also don't want to discredit that that gesture, because I think it's sweet.
Yeah, I mean, there's complexity to what love is, and I
Yeah,
think that
yeah.
there are a lot of ways that, and this is something actually you've helped me with, John, like
Mm.
not dismissing what our love was because of the ways that I think sometimes we are meant to evolve and change. And it
Hmm.
doesn't mean that because we've evolved and maybe what we want in relationships as we get older is different, that means that that wasn't real love, right? And I think we live in a society where we sort of think successful love is love that lasts a lifetime, right? Like you
Right,
go to weddings
right.
sometimes and it'll be like, the people who've been married the longest stay on the dance floor, and then they clap for the people that have been married for 40 years. And it's like, but we
Yeah,
don't know, like, are those 40 happy years? Have
yeah.
they been growing? Have they been
Right,
enriching for each of them?
right.
And, I think something you said to me a couple weeks ago that really just like shifted things for me and really hit me was like, there's so much about my love with my ex that has just been a really beautiful love story that continues.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
just changed form. Like we still have a really beautiful friendship and the love is still there. It's just a different kind of love.
Hey, by the way, are you sure that he didn't think in his sleep it was an earthquake? He was trying to get over you to get out of the house. He was rolling over you, and you're like, "Oh, this is so sweet. He's protecting me." And no, he's trying to get the fuck out of the house, like
It's very
what my
possible.
dad used to do. And yeah, because in LA, earthquakes happens all the time. My dad's out of the house anyway. I want to plant
Hmm.
maybe a little foreshadowing in that. If the stars line up, possibly you and him will do an episode together, which I think is amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things that I told you, and I applaud, and I don't know when I had that revelation. Maybe was it in? Oh, it was
In
in
Idlewild.
Idlewild when we were
Hmm.
hanging out with our friends. That maybe your guys' collision and the beauty of it, and of course you guys had great moments as well in your marriage, but um, was the breakup, meaning
Hmm.
how everyone else sees divorce as this disaster, and most people I know who are divorced, they don't talk to their partner unless they are raising a child. They have to, and they're talking shit about each other, and it's rarely where you put the person on high and they become friends, and you guys actually probably have a better relationship now than you did. Like, that's really rare.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
redefining what divorce can look like.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. That is what we're doing is sort of you know, creating a different paradigm, hopefully, for our child that he will have the experience. He was 2 when we broke up. So all he's ever known really is mom and dad are, each other's best friends.
Right.
Like that's all he's known.
So let me ask you this: the people who are listening, who are going through a divorce or are divorced, how did you guys intentionally do it this way?
Yeah.
Meaning, well, yeah, what was the process like for you? I mean, it's not just because you guys are raising a son together, or is it?
Yeah. I mean, I will say a couple things. First of all, I do hold with so much reverence. My kid's dad, he is an amazing person. He is just
Mm,
a very, like, I have so much respect for who he is as a man and a father. And I think that's a huge part of it is that he has really been committed to showing his son that he loves his mother very
hmm.
much and that
Wait,
he's
what?
heard.
One thing I just want to highlight. By the way, I'm known to interrupt people. I'm sorry,
I love it.
but if I don't, I forget. That's why. It's not me trying to be rude. Respect. Okay,
Yeah.
so it just lit up for me. So you said one thing is that has to be there. If you don't respect your ex,
Hmm.
so that's part of the ingredient is respect. So go on.
Yeah, so definitely that I respect him so much. And I think he has done so much to make it easier for me. But also, and this is something we've talked about in the past. One of my favorite spiritual teachers is Wayne Dyer. And I think that
Hmm.
one of his teachings that I always come back to is that, in every moment we are choosing between love and fear. Those are the only two options. And so, when I remember
Hmm.
the night that I'll just Mikey because I mean when Mikey and I decided that our marriage was going to end, I remember that I crawled in Cairo's crib that night, because it just was a very there's a nervous system thing that happens when you realize after being married, and we were married for 11 and a half years. It felt like a shock to my nervous system, almost like my
Wait,
body
did you
was
guys talk
shutting
about
down.
it often, or was it just like that one night was the first time, and then you guys both decided that you're gonna divorce?
No, we definitely didn't talk about it often. It was definitely like our trajectory was in a place where it was like, yeah, this is right. We were both in agreement, but the realization of it, I don't think hit until I was about to go get in. There's this thing of like, I feel like I hear divorced people talk about like the moment that you like sleep in bed alone for the first time, or the moment you look in your closet and your ex's clothes are all gone, right? Like it really just sort of hits you. And I remember I was about to go climb in bed, and I couldn't. And so I went in my little boy's room and I climbed in his crib. At the time, I'm getting like emotional as I talk about it. And it's like, it really felt like the universe spoke to me and said, Dene, this is love or fear time, right? Like you have two options, love or fear. And I decided that I was going to be committed to love being my North Star. And when I felt like I was out of alignment with love, I needed to figure out how to bring myself back. And that's just been, the practice over and over. When I feel myself irritated or activated or shortchanged or entitled to something, it's like, is this fear or is this love? And if it's fear, what would love say about this situation? And how do I bring it back to love? And again, I think that when we're committed to trying to hold things that way, the universe throws us a bone and makes it easier. Mikey had a girlfriend. He's been in a long-term relationship, and she was someone who from the beginning was like an angel in my life. She made it so easy for me. She like came over the first time she met me with like this huge bouquet of flowers and was just like, I just want you to know, like you, wanting to meet me and inviting me into your son's life means everything to me. And we like started crying and hugged each other. And it was just like the universe threw me a bone and like made it easy for me to love her and to be close with her. But I think that is because I was committed to like, I'm not going to let my ego lead here. I'm going to try to lead with love.
See, that's another piece of this that's kind of rare, is you connecting, befriending the person, like the first person he started to really date, get in a relationship with. Right. Most people shut that person out. They don't want to know. They don't want to see. They don't. So you guys were friendly with each other, which, again, and that's because you chose love over fear, you're saying.
Yeah, because if I'd looked at it through the lens of fear, it would have been easy to catch up. Like she's younger, like she's a literal supermodel. Like she's the most beautiful woman. Like every part of like my ego could have conceivably dropped into fear about why I wasn't enough, about why my child might like this young, cool girl better, all of these things. But that's what fear would say. But love would say, this is a person who is making someone you care about really happy. This is more love in your child's life. Why would that be a bad thing? If you choose to see it as not a bad thing, it just makes your life so much easier than if you choose to be in fear about it,
That's a really big deal. It's rare. And I wonder, people listening to this, if they're like, how does one get a divorce, still respect and have a healthy relationship with their now ex, and then welcome their ex's new love with open arms? It's such a to me, demonstration of where you're at, what's important to you, and your capacity to love. The size of your heart. Yeah.
Trying to make me cry, John.
Why? Question: what gravitated you toward Wayne Dyer?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think I saw him on an Oprah Soul Series interview, and just so much of what he was saying felt like truths that were resonating. I remember I heard him say, the mantra of the lower self says, I need more. The mantra of the higher self says, how do I serve? And you know how sometimes you hear something and it's going to be really important in your life to remember that. Yeah. And I always come back to that. And it just, with everything, I think I I use that with couples a lot when I'm working with them, right? Like we can really focus in on where we need more and what we're not getting, but the energetic between us really shifts when we shift into the space of service and how I can show up for you. And I think that's been a lot of times what I focus on in my relationship with Mikey. He does a lot to help me and make my life easier. And when I think like, how can I be in service of him and offering back some of what he's given to me? It just makes our dynamic and the energy between us so much better and so much easier, you know?
What you just said, that mantra, it reminds me of my relationship with sex. It's how can I get? It's either how can I get more, or how can I serve? And it's
How can you serve, John?
I know, and it's usually the how can I get more or I need more. That's usually the one that wins. But yeah, the reason I ask you that is about the Wayne Dyer is because I don't know a lot of people who reference him. I mean, I know he's really popular and stuff, but just in my circle. But he was also someone that when I was going through my divorce, for some reason, out of all the people from Tony Robbins to whoever, he's the one that I gravitated toward the most. I almost felt like he was the dad I never had. I love that he showed up because he made jokes. He was casual. He didn't come because he does all these speeches and stuff. He just kind of spoke from a place of guy like Mr. Rogers, almost like next door. He didn't put himself on a pedestal. And so I really gravitated toward him. I learned a lot about showing up in that way as doing this work. He kind of felt like the everyman.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because there are a lot of elements about the way that you speak to things that actually remind me of him. And like, I just feel like you're both storytellers. You both speak in metaphors a lot of times to make things like something you can wrap your head around. I know that, we've talked about this with you, that you don't necessarily think of yourself as like spiritual and like leading with that in terms of the way that you speak to things, but I always have felt that about you. And so I think there's a lot of ways that you just speak to things through the lens of like the soul in a way that Wayne Dyer did. That it just sort of like, it doesn't surprise me that his work really resonated with you.
Yeah, I don't see myself that way. But it's hard for us to see ourselves other than the way that we see ourselves, right? Yeah. And then of course we both have really bad jokes. He wasn't that funny, but he was cute.
Your jokes are really funny.
I don't know. Anyway, so you are now single. What has that been like so far? So wait, you're now single. When were you single before? I mean, so minus like high school, like in your like adult life, because you got married at 28. How long did you date Mikey before you got married, or was it fast?
We dated. I mean, God, I moved to New York at 25. I think we met like shortly after I wasn't there that long before we met, and so I think we were together like 2 years or something before we got married.
So from, I don't know, 18 to 25, were you single or were you just kind of dating on and off?
Not really. I mean, I think I had like a 4-year relationship in there. I certainly had a lot of like boyfriends that would be like 6 months or a year type thing.
Yeah. So then is it
not a lot of single?
Is it correct to say that this is the first time you've been single in your life?
I mean, for a long trajectory like I've been single for 3 years now, which is so, I mean, it's fascinating. It's just been the most beautiful, expansive time for me. And I think that we very much have a societal idea that we are like single in the in-between until the next thing, right? Like we're single, but we're like, it's sort of like this interim period, I think is what I'm looking for. Whereas I tend to hold it a little differently. And I'm obsessed with this idea of we should be single, but what if we were single until we found a relationship, a connection that made it justified to give up our singlehood status? Meaning I've kind of fallen in love with being single. Like there's so much about
Yeah.
the ways that I've had the opportunity to get to know myself that, to the point you were just making, I didn't have for so much of my life because I always had what I think was the distraction of a relationship a lot of times. And there were a lot of ways that and I see a lot of people certainly, we can hide out in relationships from doing some of our like deeper work and like allowing ourselves to be really uncomfortable.
Sure.
Um, and because I've had to do that for the last 3 years, I've really grown in a lot of ways that now when someone comes into my world, and I believe that I do want to like share my life with someone and have a
Hmm.
partner, but it's going to be when it's justified, not because I am in any way incomplete here by myself.
Yeah, and that's a direct relation uh, to your relationship with yourself, right? That the
Mm,
measure, because if you were disconnected with yourself and you're numbing and running and uncomfortable with being alone, then you would have already justified many times. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I don't know if you would. I mean, you would negotiate a lot more,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I think, it's funny that I have ended up, and especially in my singlehood, for whatever reason, working with couples has sort of been my thing. You know, I find that therapists either love working with couples or they don't like it at all. I love it. And I've learned so much about how to work with couples through the lens of singlehood, meaning a lot of times I think that there are ways that we don't challenge some of what the societal ideas of what our partnerships should be and should look like are
Mm,
until it's not true. Like I was married for 11 and a half years. So I certainly very much have the felt experience of what it like feels like to be in a partnership. And there are some things that I believed to be true about like what I needed, the way that I needed to show up and my partner needed to show up that were pretty arguable. And
hmm.
some of the things that I've learned to do in like my own self-soothing work and my, I'm still very much in a relationship with Mikey. We have a child together, but there's
Right.
a level of respect and like a lack of entitlement between us that wasn't there when we were married, if that makes sense.
Why do you think that is? Why is that there now and it wasn't before?
It's so funny. I remember one day, and this is, I tell couples this sometimes. We had like, I don't remember what we were like in conflict about, but I was like mad at him about something. And like, I was like, this, rah, right. And I went back in the house and he like didn't care. He like did not care that I was mad at him. And it was
Hmm.
like this realization where when we were married, he would have had to care, or I would
Mm,
have been able to
right.
control him, or I would have punished him, but he didn't have to care. And all of a sudden it like hit me like a ton of bricks, like, oh, I'm not actually entitled to anything from him anymore, except him caring for our child together. That's his job. Like everything he does for me is gravy. It's like he doesn't have to. Um, but that was always the case. I just didn't think it was the case when we were married. I felt entitled to him doing things when I wasn't always, respectful of his feelings
Hmm.
or I think this is such a big conversation, but I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways that we are raised to not really see one another in partnerships. And I didn't have to really see him and care about how he felt because he was mine. He was my husband. He belonged to me. So like
Right.
fall in line and that's not the case all of a sudden when he wasn't my partner, but that's not really loving him well for it to be the case when we are married. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was just thinking, wow, how many relationships would be different, including my own, if you took entitlement, if you took shoulds, if you took possession, the
Yes.
promise, all out of it.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's interesting because if we look at your relationship with Mike as an experiment, as data, um, it's better now than before because those things are out of it. There is no promise. Entitlement's gone.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, respect is there. I mean, that oh, maybe it wasn't there. And then maybe the respect wasn't there when you were married. I don't know, but now respect is big, right? You see him as someone who is yeah, an amazing father, and so you do have respect for him. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think people ask me sometimes, like, what is like the number one thing that's like the killer of relationships? I think it's entitlement. I think we
Mm,
come from a really ownership. based paradigm of
Yep.
partnerships. Like
Yeah.
once someone is my partner, they're mine. It's, back from days when like people were property and like you married someone and she became yours and vice versa.
Yeah.
But I think if we sort of say like nothing is promised, because it really isn't. At any
Hmm.
time someone
Hmm.
could decide to get a divorce or leave the relationship. It's just sort of a illusion we're holding that this person belongs to us. But if we said like every day I have with this person is a gift and I'm not entitled to tomorrow, I just feel like we interact a lot differently than we would with that sense of entitlement.
So one of the things that I've taken from you and I keep in my back pocket, and I think I've said this to you before, is exactly what you're talking about. That nothing is promised. I think it's such a great
Mm.
reminder, and I know you formed that from the loss of a dear friend, correct?
Yeah, I think a big part of why my marriage ending with Mikey was something I was able to be in acceptance of and not resistance was, Vanessa and I went to grad school with a friend that
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe was like one of the loves of my life. He
Mm,
was an angel in human form. He taught me so much about
yeah, yeah.
presence and generosity and just like the type of person I want to be. And then all of a sudden, at 45 years old, his life was over. Stage 4 lung cancer, had never smoked a day in his life. And I remember being in his hospital room and thinking, there is no reason that I'm entitled to keep living and he's not. And so all of this is
Mm-hmm.
like not promised. It's a gift. I'm not like deserving of anything, everything I have. I'm so blessed to have. And I remember when my marriage ended being like, well, he's still here. And so I have an opportunity to maybe love him better than I did when we were married. And he's not gone. So it's okay. And I think the fact that I lost Darren so close to my marriage ending really
Mm-hmm.
impacted my level of resistance to the ending. It was just, I was in a lot more acceptance because it's like, these are the things of life. None of this is promised to any of us.
It became primer for you. Like it became a
Mm,
foundation. It shifted you in a way. It was easier for you to swing that way because losing a friend.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
weird.
That's
Nothing
true.
gives us rack focus and what's important more than life or death. So giving, having
Mm.
a child or when someone dies, it puts things into perspective very fast.
Yeah. I think if we hold death in a present way, we live differently. And I think losing someone that I loved that much changed me forever.
Yeah.
I think it is, I mean, I know it is, it's absolutely possible to have something you experience change you in a really profound way. And I don't take my life for granted. I don't feel promised, I remember I didn't have a kid for a really long time. In a lot of ways because I think I was like scared of the vulnerability of it because you have a
Hmm.
kid and it's like, whew, your heart is just like walking around outside
Yeah.
of your body. But I think I love my child differently, knowing that like I'm not promised tomorrow with that little angel being. Like he's
Mm.
here today. So let me love him like today's my last day.
Where in your relationship did you feel the most entitled? Where in your relationship did you struggle with entitlement? In what part of the relationship?
Um, that's tough. I think, and this isn't me like bagging on the women in my family at all, because I think this is so much of what is I've come to understand very much of how we are conditioned. But like, I think we are a society where men are conditioned to not feel their feelings and women are really conditioned to not care that men aren't feeling their feelings and that men are
Mm.
like, and I think that can go both ways, but I think we're just so really thinking about our own pain and our own hurts that we just really never are curious about what it's like for them. And I think Bell Hooks's book, where she writes about like men, it's called The Will to Change, really impacted me, where she was talking about how much patriarchy hurts men too, because it doesn't
Hmm.
allow men to feel their feelings and like be open about their hurts. And I think having a little boy and thinking about that really made me think about how much I didn't care about how Mikey felt a lot of the time. I just felt like
Mm.
fall in line. That's your job.
Right, right.
And he was like this whole beautiful person who pledged his life to loving me and like really worked really hard for a long time to try to love me well. But I say a lot of times, and we've had conversations about this sense. Like, I wasn't equipped to love a
Mm-hmm.
man the way that now I feel like I will, but that wasn't something that was modeled. That wasn't something that I really had an idea of what that is or what that looks like.
Yeah.
So I forgive myself, but I think I felt entitled to his love. I think I took for granted, how kind he was, how
Mm-hmm.
much he showed up for me and what he did for me. And I think that I see that a lot in the couples that I work with. And again, that's both ways, but I think that sometimes, and I say this to my sisters and the women out there with so much respect, I think a lot of times we have just, it's almost like a princess mentality that we're sort of
Mm-hmm.
raised with, that like,
Mm-hmm.
that whole happy wife, happy life, like it's a man's job
Yeah.
to like fall in line, and it's just not true, and it's just not loving one another well.
I hate that term. I heard it because a lot of men say that, on golf courses, right?
Hmm.
Uh, Happy wife, happy life. I don't like it because it can be an excuse to not do any work. It's like,
Hmm.
um, as long as she's happy, I'm good. And I think it's dismissive.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
dismissive of both people, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's, what do you want though? It's funny, and I
Right.
know you probably know this from sitting with couples, but so often I will ask a man questions in couples therapy that I
Hmm.
can tell for sure he's never thought about or nobody's ever asked him.
Right.
And
Right.
it's just like, what? Like, about how he feels. And
Hmm.
sometimes the woman will be like, why did I bring him? Because it's like the floodgates are open, because all of a sudden he is thinking about, but how does this feel for me? What do I want out of our dynamic? And I think collectively we are shifting into a space where there's just a lot more of that, like both people really doing their own work so that we can meet one another more as equals and more as more attempting to become more self-actualized, and using
Yeah.
our relationship as a vehicle for that, versus once we're married we're done and we just get to settle in because it's a wrap for the rest of our lives. I don't think that's really the point of relationships to me.
Do you find that the more you evolve, grow, um, become spiritual, all these things that are happening, do you think it's harder to find a partner because what you're looking for is now more specific?
Hmm. Well, here's where I'm going to get a little woo-woo on you, John.
Does the ocean turn into a little plastic swimming pool that your crazy uncle
I
buys you?
I believe that when I am ready, the universe will bring me the partner that
Mm,
I'm meant to walk my path with. It's just
sure.
my experience of
Yeah. Yeah.
this life and what I believe. And so I don't think so much about like finding that person. I think about making myself the woman who is equipped to love the man that I want to love well, and someone that I'm like proud to be regardless. And I believe the universe, he's going to come to me when it's my time. But
Mm,
yeah, I think that's a conversation I have with a lot of single people, and I feel like it can feel really defeating when we feel like this is something I am meant to figure out. And these dating apps are just, I don't know if you've been on them, but I understand why it feels that way, because it just
yeah.
feels like tough when logic is supposed to be how I figure it out. But I like to say, like, I don't think it's love is logic. I think we're supposed to, this is one of the areas we're supposed to give it up to something bigger than ourselves.
Mm. What's the hardest thing about being single?
Spiders kill, no, when there's
Killing
spiders in
spiders? Not having anyone to kill spiders. I think that's a fair remark. Yeah, you're alone in that.
No, that's not true though. I think it's, to be fully honest, it's intimacy, like physical
Yeah,
intimacy. Like, I
yeah.
think, and
Just
what's
because as
funny
humans
is
we crave
like,
touch.
yeah, like I
Yeah.
didn't crave it when I was married, but I think it's like once you can't have that thing, all of a sudden it's, yeah, I think that's probably the hardest part, is like longing to have that sometimes.
What kind of intimacy you're talking about? Doing nothing with someone and what it feels like to have that person next to you. You're talking about sex. You're talking about loving someone, or I guess all of the above, right?
I mean, I was mostly thinking about sex, John, but
Oh, okay.
I think Yeah, no, I do think it's like the person, because I have that in a lot of areas, like
Mm,
something great happens. I text you and Vanessa, like, like I have a lot of like love in my life. And I think that that's something that's important for us to know about not only singlehood, but our relationships in general. I think we've put way too much on the nuclear family structure, and that like my person should be my everything. And I think that it just puts so much pressure on the relationship, where if and when I have a person, I already have a whole village of people who've been supporting me through these
hmm
last 3 years. And I think
hmm
if I didn't have my people, this would be more challenging than it would. But I have a lot of people who really support me and root for me and are there for me to share all of my things with, my little moments. But definitely, like, I like snuggles, and
Yeah, of course.
that part's kind of challenging sometimes.
After my divorce, I was single for I think 4 years. I went through a long stretch of singlehood, and
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I think this is common for most people. Um, not just sex, but intimacy. The craving, skin hunger, all of that, right? Companionship.
Mhm.
That, and then I think for many people, they struggle with the ticking clock. They struggle with, okay, when is this person going to come? How old am I going to be? And then that's lined with discouragement, hopelessness, and all of that stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't feel as much of that because I
Yeah.
was married for so long, maybe, that this felt a little like I was like liberated when
hmm
I finally got divorced. But I remember Mark Groves said something that I loved so much. He was talking about how when he was single, he would watch other couples and like them cuddling or like doing things that
hmm
he longed to experience for himself. And he said to himself, I can't wait. I can't wait till it's my turn. And I just
Yeah.
loved that as a reframe versus like, oh, I don't have that, but like
Right. Right.
I've started saying to myself, like, ooh, I can't wait until my person is here for me to cuddle up with. And it feels different. It feels exciting.
Yeah, I was saying when I'm single, who do I want to be when I meet that person?
Mm,
And so I got busy because the
okay.
ticking clock for me wasn't that I was getting older. The ticking clock for me was there's someone coming, I don't know when. So I better start, working on myself now, whether that is going to the gym or studying or whatever it was, right? Doing my thing, building whatever I'm building, because I want to be at a place where I could give the most when I meet that person.
That's beautiful.
What do you think about, and this is a big topic, so we'll just kind of like touch upon it, but what do you think about open relationships?
Oh. For myself.
Okay,
um,
so generally speaking, and then of course for yourself, would that work?
Yeah, I think that we have to, as a society, really get more in the space of curiosity around all
Mm-hmm.
of the things that we've been offered that we're holding as gospel, that like this is a baseline of truth.
Right.
And what else could be true? And why is this true? And is it
Mm-hmm.
based in fear or love? Now, for me personally, I feel like there's only so many hours in the day. And like, I don't know, like I
You
look
don't
at
have the
couples
energy.
and
Yeah.
I'm like, that just feels like a whole lot of drama. Like, you know,
You have the energy for one partner and a toy, and that's
whew,
it.
yeah, yeah, but you say that joking, but I'm really introverted. And so I do get
Right.
overwhelmed
Right.
a lot of times by like the obligations of like someone needing, or not needing, but like wanting time and energy. And so I feel like that would feel overwhelming to me to try to disperse that amongst more than one person. But I think that different people are different. And I think that
Yeah.
sometimes, I do think sometimes, though, and this might be a little controversial, I think that sometimes the release valve of the tension that comes up in relationships, right? Like there are moments of discomfort that if there's someone else I just go to, I think sometimes we have a release valve that we wouldn't have if I have to stay in the discomfort and work it out with this person.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I can just go to this person over here because it makes me feel good in this specific way, I might not stay in the discomfort of that work. But again, and I've never, been in a polyamorous relationship, so I can't really speak to that. It's just, I think some of the clients that I've had that are navigating some of those dynamics, it feels like sometimes we can hit the hills and go like hide out in another dynamic sometimes versus staying in the tension
Hmm.
of the discomfort that inevitably comes up when we're in partnerships, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely a current and very hot topic and conversation these days.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this for all singles listening.
Hmm.
And I know you're single as well, you're still going through your journey. Um, but what have you learned in the last 3 years that you can share that may help them? I mean, you already have, as in the reframe of singlehood. I love what you said. What are some things that they can do if they're listening and feeling discouraged, lonely? When am I going to find the one? All that stuff.
Hmm. I think that you are never alone because you are always with the part of you that has yourself. And that,
Mm,
sorry, that is what these last 3 years have really taught me, is to trust myself, to
mm-hmm.
trust that I have my own back. That thing we were talking about, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
about when I was young, and I sort of felt like my mom handed the baton to my ex and said, "You
Mm-hmm.
take her." I know for sure I've got me now. Like that is
Mm-hmm.
what these last 3 years have taught me. Like I can take care of myself. I have taken care of myself. I think a lot of my relationship, there were times when we sort of were close to letting go and breaking up in the past, and we didn't. And I think a lot of the times that I held on were because I was afraid of being alone and I was afraid of taking care of myself. And I think that when we face the thing that we're most afraid of, what it teaches us is that we can face that thing. It teaches us about our resilience and what we're capable of. And I think in my next relationship, I will be a very different version of me because I know myself on a different level, because I've had to be in a real intimate connection with myself. So,
Mm,
I think if you are single, how do I look at it as an invitation to really be in the sacred space of solitude and in relationship with myself for right now, knowing that you may not always have this opportunity. So, how do I look at it as an opportunity to be with me?
yeah, I love that. So focus on having your own back, not on who's going to
Mm.
have your front, on who's going to have your. You're going to have your own back, so you're going into it as a kind of a whole being. Also, you know what, it helped me a lot when I was single. I used to say to myself, uh, "Who's going with?" Okay, I used to say to myself, "Where am I going?" And then who's going with me? And then
Mm.
if I reverse the order, I'll be going alone, because most of my life I was looking for who's going with me, and then where am I going? And then you put all the chips on finding someone or the relationship. And then when I got a divorce, I decided to flip it. Where am I going? Meaning, what do I want to build? Who do I want to be? What do I want to leave behind? Where am I going? And then who's going with me? And that
God,
really changed my behavior, mindset, all that, priorities.
I love that so much. I heard Marianne Williamson say something that I feel like was kind of similar, in that she was saying she believes the purpose of relationships is coming together as souls with a shared soul mission. And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily mean like, we have the same career path, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like an idea of like the trajectory of what I want out of this life that I've been
Mm-hmm.
given. And that our perspectives are similar in terms of like where we're going and what we want, but you have to kind of know what that is for yourself. And it's not like we have to have a completely, defined definition of that before we meet someone. But I think if there isn't a shared vision that we're moving in the same trajectory of like what we want out of this time, then I
Yeah.
think it becomes challenging.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna end with this, and I'm actually making this up as we go. I'm gonna say it's the hot seat. It's 5 quick questions. I don't even know what the questions are. I just trust myself that I'm gonna give you something, and then you answer very fast.
I love
What
it.
turns you on?
Oh, God. Curiosity.
Oh, what turns you off?
Judgment.
Mm. What are you excited about?
Mm, my life.
specifically? That's number four
um,
specifically.
what am I excited about? I feel like just how much better it gets every year. I feel
Mm,
like as I've come into my 40s, I'm like, God, this just keeps getting better. What
yeah.
next? What else? I heard someone say the other day, say to the universe, like, show me how good it can get. And I love that. Like,
So
that's my new thing.
people who are listening and rolling your eyes and you think Dene's full of shit, I'm telling you that she's real. This isn't full of shit. I've witnessed her character arc, and
Aw.
she just sold a book. She's thriving. She's out going running retreats. She's busy. So this isn't her in her sweats eating her feelings, but coming on here talking a lot of shit like she loves her life, right? She really does love her life. I feel it, right? So if you're rolling your eyes at home, this is truth. And the
I
final
do wear
question,
sweats, but I do love my life.
the final question is, what's one thing you know about yourself that you didn't just a few years ago?
Oh, um, that I am wise.
Mm,
I didn't know that about myself, but I believe
yeah.
in my wisdom now, and I trust myself so much more than I did 3 years ago, and that makes me feel really good to just trust in my own wisdom, my own inner authority.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom, not hoarding it. And Dene,
Hmm.
you're such a beautiful soul. Thank you for all the work that you do. And this podcast is different than others as far as the format goes. At the end, the host, and I see the host as you today, not me, um, gets to share something that they're doing, they're excited about, whether it is what social they're on, or anything they want to promote. So what would that be for you?
Oh my gosh. Just one thing. Well, I'm writing a book that
Yes.
is all about masculine and feminine dynamics. And it's sort of become the obsession of my life, the love of my life, to just like really work to understand how we heal our relationships. And this has become a huge part of it. So,
Do you have the title
yeah,
yet?
I mean, it's called Liberated Love, a
Mm.
guide to healing relationships by reclaiming the masculine and feminine within.
Look out for Liberated Love. It should be out in about probably in about a year or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I just, if I may, John, thank you. I'm so grateful for your friendship and everything that you've been in my
Mm.
life. I'm getting emotional again, but there are so many ways that long before I knew you, you gave me just like a lighthouse for what is possible when we are willing to bet on ourselves. And
Oh,
that's
thank you
been a
so
huge
much.
part of me having my own back, is having someone like you in my world. So thank you
Yeah, you're a
for who
dear
you
friend
are.
to me. Thank you so much for being a part of my life as well. All right, thank you for listening, everyone. Be well. I hope that episode was helpful. Hey, listen, if you want to share your singlehood journey, if you've gone somewhere and come back, if you have revelations and wisdom, please share your story. It's going to help other people. Nothing makes us feel more connected than hearing other people's stories. So just send me the audio of your story, and you could just record it directly from your phone and email it to theangrytherapist@gmail.com. Also, if you want our Single on Purpose newsletter, go to singleonpurpose.life. That's singleonpurpose.life. You will get tools and articles and other people's stories, and also Zoom links to private gathers. So if you want to join our community, go to singleonpurpose.life. Thank you for listening. Be well. We hope you tell a friend.
Hello, this is Jennifer. I'm 30 years old. I live in Los Angeles, California. I was born and raised here. I am first generation Latina to hold a master's degree in psychology. I've been single for a long time. And a little bit about that is because it's been really tough, trying to get the label. Um, and I also didn't want to settle for less. And I also see, the men that came to my life. They were broken, and I just feel like they never gave me the label. And I also didn't know how to date these men, these individuals, just because through my process as my early, in my 20s and even as a teenager, I would always kind of run away from, even when I liked the boy, or I would always be like, I would tell my friends and be like, hey, I like this guy, but I would get really, really shy about that. But I've been single for a very long time, and now I'm kind of like, I'm 30. I need to step out of my shell and just like see what's out there. But I'm now currently dating, and I'm on the dating apps, and this year I took a chance on getting out of my comfort zone and going on dates, and I feel like I'm on a phase 2 in my dating life right now, just because I feel like dating in my phase 1 was kind of like the introduction, and it was really tiring. I feel like emotionally tiring is what I mean. They It's like a lot of like getting to know you, a lot of first time dates, but I think I didn't make it to the second dates, just because I feel like I feel like it wasn't even me. At some point I felt like it was me, but it wasn't. Looking back at it, I felt like I was attracting men from my past again, just because I feel like now, I took that time off to actually, like, what, this is what I need to work on. Like, what is my plan here? Like, what is my plan for myself? Like, so that I can get a better outcome. Because, like I was telling you, in the past, I feel like I was dealing with a lot of situationships. I feel like I had 2 situationships. And I've never brought anybody home. None of my parents don't know, somebody that's, oh, here's my boyfriend. Like, no, just because I feel like when I do bring someone home, is because this is serious, and this is something that, he's mature, and I'm mature, and I was about to say mature. So yeah, I don't know. I just felt like I was never that individual that the family can talk about, like, oh, look at her, like, she's dating this guy now, like, oh, she's dating that one, or I don't know. I just felt like I just wanted to be different. I didn't want to be like the traditional of what we see on TVs, and or what we see our elder cousins going through. So anyhow, yeah. So I was dealing, also another thing that I felt like my other situationships is that in the beginning stages, I just felt like it was really hard for me to be even vulnerable, even to put my feelings into words. And when I did that, I had a lot of insecurity as well. And I just feel like these men had insecurities, and I just felt like I was being emotionally used by them, just because they still didn't, they don't know what they want still, and they want you, but they're just like stringing you along. And then it took me a while to figure out these things, just because I was just so goal oriented. I was finishing school. That's one of my priorities things, but I still wanted a chance of love, and I've never been in love because I've never been vulnerable. And I had to do a genogram, and then the genogram, I started seeing all of these relationship patterns that my extended family. And one thing that caught my attention was that, my mom would be like, oh, date these men, by their race. And I'll be like, what? Like, but you've never even dated a man outside your culture, or even in my family, they would always try to give me advice or tell me this, or tell me, date this type of men, because those are the men that they wish they had dated for better outcome, I guess, but yeah, another thing, also navigating and identifying my worth, value, goals, purpose, and what I want. And just putting my feelings into words is something that, I've struggled in the past. And now dating is like, okay, now everything that I've learned, I'm putting that in there. And dating phase 2 is kind of like, it's a little bit more fun. I feel like I'm being myself more, and I'm actually seeing the red flags, and also going on dates is it's still like a little struggle with me, because sometimes I don't want to go put myself out there, just because I'm just like, oh, is this gonna, like, what is this gonna happen, like, like, is it gonna happen, like the past keeps coming, but I try to not focus on that as much, and just remember myself. What else? I think just being present is what I'm learning, also to be in the present, having fun with them, learning how to ask the questions, and not just like those, basic norm questions like, oh, what's your favorite color? What do you do this? It's just like, just keep it very interesting. I feel like, not getting so deep, but just like learning what kind of questions I should ask. That's one of the things that, and remembering them, because sometimes I get brain farts. I'm like, oh my God, I'm too much in my head. So let me see. One thing I do notice in the dating apps is that, and this is very general, but just my experience, it's like a lot of people have 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and that kind of makes it really hard. And that's when the questions come up of like, what kind of questions, do I, I don't want to challenge, but I also want to get into like, I want to get somewhere with this, I'm dating with a purpose. So I feel like, the chemistry, and then, just going back and forth, and then not overthinking things through text, or, because we're behind the phone. So sometimes, I want that connection, like, and not just only online, but also one thing is like dating, it's hard. I don't think it's easy. I don't even know if somebody says it's easy, like, please tell me what's easy, because I just feel like there's like ups and downs of it. Especially as a, clinical, going into my field. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm about to be a registered marriage and family therapist, and then that's kind of hard. So it's just like, I'm learning how to navigate this into, I'm never assessing somebody, but analyzing them, not assessing them, sorry, analyzing them. But I get a lot of, like, they have a lot of biases, and then I'll just be like, oh no, we're not like that. We want to come from a place where we turn off our brains. One thing I've learned in the past as well is that, in order for me to date as well, it's like I've learned how to heal myself, and how to put my needs and wants, and be a priority, and not let like lead as well, not always have let the guy lead into the conversation, but also like let my personality pop out. And also I'm kind of tired of dating like the local boys. I'm still in the survival mode of singlehood, and it's really hard. I'm not gonna sit here and be easy, but I love the challenge, because I feel like I am learning to be vulnerable, to get out there, my social skills, have a conversation, look somebody in the eye, be present in the experience. What are they all about? Like, based on, the planning that takes. Like, do they really make an effort? You know, what are my red flags? What are my green flags? Also, how I'm thriving in singlehood. I feel like I'm doing pretty good. I just sometimes I have to remind myself that, you know, there might be some rejection, because, you know, but then again, I have to remind myself, like, I am not for everybody, you know, and not everybody's for me. And I've also rejected some people in you know, who are single, but I still went on the date just because I'm like, damn, I agreed to go on this, you know, like this Thursday I have a date, and I went, he bought the tickets already, and I'm over here like, oh, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to just going to go have fun, be myself, give him the 100% me. And if there's chemistry, if there's not, you know, like, just be honest with yourself, but be honest with yourself and be honest with him. And, you know, and I don't know, I'm looking at it options. I'm learning how, also networking. What else? I'm just looking at it like in a way where, but I feel like I am in a good example just because I feel like I've been through a lot in my life, and I just feel like I've been breaking a lot of barriers, and I just feel like, damn, like, you know, like, I really want to get to know somebody through just spending time with them, and then not really get involved sexually with them right off the bat, you know, just to get to know them for who they are, and see where this goes.